In this application, I'm going to build a Node web application without any dependencies. Why no dependencies? Because maintaining dependencies is a bit of a pain. Installing a few basic packages, like the ones shown here on screen, will give you about 600 packages. I'm going to show that. npm install lodash type orm webpack express pg jest TypeScript. These are reasonable packages you might use in a modern Node project. 612 packages for just installing these few packages. These are the current packages. That's way too many in my opinion, but hey, it's here. And usually you just don't look at the folder and, well, ignore them. And I'm going to start with a new project. npm init. Yes, yes please. Okay, let's first discuss what I'm going to build. I'm going to build a Twitter clone or an X clone, but I'm not going to call it X. Without dependencies, but you knew that already. Usually I use jest, supertest and JS-DOM to check the responses of my application. These are not available to me right now, so I'm going to have to find something else. For the web server I usually use Express and a bunch of plugins, but well, we have to stick with whatever NodeJS provides us today. So to get started, let's write a file. Let's just create a file. And we're going to use the standard HTTP package from NodeJS, because, well, that's what's available to us. And I'm going to create a server. Let's just move this here. No, I'm not going to move that there. Create server, and we need a handler, sync requests, and we're going to listen at port 1337 for some reason. That's a web server. Hello world, it's working, but that's not a test. I want to actually test it, not using the browser. So let's get back to my editor, the editor. And we're going to write a test. Node.js comes with a testing library these days. There is a describe it syntax. This is all Node.js. This is a standard Node.js library. So this is great. So you don't need Jest or Mocha. I'm just going to use this. From node test, and I'm going to use assert from node assert. It returns hello, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm going to throw this away anyway. And we have a response. We can use fetch to actually perform a request to the server, which is incredibly stupid, but we're going to do it anyway. Expect what? Oh, we don't have expect. Assert contains, includes. What do we have? Deep equal match. Match. Okay, we're going to use match. Hello world. Okay, now the test run. Let's switch to the terminal. And that works. The request failed because the server isn't running. So let's make the server start by importing the file, which is incredibly stupid, but it works. Let's go to the terminal again. Okay, so this works. I don't like it. I don't want to do actual HTTP request in my test because it's slow. It takes 20 milliseconds. Also, the tests aren't stopped because the server keeps running. I can fix that by closing the server after a test and waiting for the server to start before each test. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to do real HTTP requests in my test. So I want to abstract the HTTP stack away in some way. So the problems with my current approach is that you cannot really run these requests in parallel. You can, but well, just don't. It's slow, so I have to find a way to abstract it. So my plan is to create some kind of request object based on the actual request, which contains the HTTP method, the path, some cookies, and maybe some other stuff relevant for the application. And then handle the request, make the request handler return another object that represents the response. That includes a status, the headers, and the content. That's actually everything you need in an HTTP response. And the response might look like this. Why is this better? Well, there is no server to start, there is no network to use. You can mock the request and easily inspect the response. The problem with this approach, by checking for literal text in an HTML response, is if the formatting of the HTML is slightly different, your test will fail. Like if it includes some white space or an extra class, or it's a different element. I don't want my test to fail if a class name changes. I can check for the content, like the hello world only, without the h1. But if your response doesn't contain the text, you will basically get an error like hello world not found in the whole HTML file, like shown here. Any real application will have very complex HTML documents, and you don't want to scroll through your terminal to find out why your text isn't showing. I don't want to inspect the HTML document in my test. So instead I want to inspect JSON responses, like you would use with a React application where you send JSON data from the server and render them on the client, like this. However, I don't want to write a single page application, I don't want to use React, I don't want any dependencies, I'm not going to write my own React, so I'm going to use templates. I'm going to generate an object like this. It has a status, a template name, and basically a JSON response, which is just an object with some data. And this data is going to be passed through to an AGS-like template language, which I'm going to have to build myself because there is no template language in NodeJS. And then in my test, I can check the variables and not the rendered template. So basically I can inspect the variables, see if the values are correct, and in my test I can render the template and not inspect the result, just render the template to see if any error is generated, or better, if no error is generated. And I can generally assume that if the response data is correct and the template doesn't throw an error, the page is rendered correctly. Because there is no reasonable way to test if an HTML response is correct. It's not perfect because you won't know if the template actually renders the data you're passing to it. But there's just no reasonable way to test that, because you can still render the content without showing it by using these tricks I've shown here, hiding the content with a display none, or moving it very far away. With this it won't work because you need 1000 pixels, but hey, you can make the color transparent or the font size 0, or you can remove it with JavaScript. All fun ways to make a test pass, but still have no content on screen. So my point is, you have to test templates with your eyes. There's just no other way. You have to render the template in the browser and look at it. testing template should be done by a human, I wrote very nicely here. So let's start working on an implementation. First, I want to create the handler. And the handler is going to, well, it's going to be a separate class or something. So export class app, and that has a handle request method. And the handle request method accepts a method, a path, and a body. And it returns a status, a template name, home, and some variables like name, Joe. And then in our test, I'm going to write something. First, I'm going to import app, and then I'm going to describe app test handle request. Handle request returns something, I don't know. It returns something. So it accepts a method, a path, and a body, and the body is nothing. And that's a response. And the response I'm going to check with deep equal, and that's going to be 200, the template name, and some variables. Joe. Now switch to the test, cut, node test, app. Yeah, that passes. Now, is there a watch mode in these tests? Let's see. Help. Help! Oh boy. Watch. Run in watch mode. That's just way too easy. It actually works. So now we know the test can pass, but what does it look like if it fails? So let's change it to something else. Haha. And the test immediately fails. Expected values to be loosely deep equal. Should loosely deep equal, okay, well, it's not as clear as the jest error messages, which give you a div with the red and green. But this is workable. I like it. Okay, we have a new day, a brand new day. Let's continue writing our application. But first, let's see if our tests fail or succeed by calling nodes test. So I looked at the documentation in the meantime, and I found out that if you use something like this, it will only execute one file for some reason. Even if you run two files, it will only run one. So you don't do this. You can just do this, and it will find all test files and execute them. And the test will fail because I made a mistake. And the mistake I've made is class constructor app cannot be invoked without new, and that's correct. Because I forgot a new keyword here, and the next error is going to be that templates folder doesn't exist, which it does now because I created this file. And now if I run the test for the index for this file, which I'm going to rename to main because I like to call the entry point of my application main and not index. I like to use index for libraries, for packages, but not for applications. But the problem here is main will start a server and it won't exit. So this import is never going to finish. It's just forever importing because of this listen. I'm not sure exactly, but I don't want to test my main file. So I'm going to delete this main test, and I'm going to test the main file manually by just starting the application. So I'm hoping to keep the main file very lightweight eventually, just move everything out of it, so I can test anything but the main file. So now we only test the app class, and the app class is returning an array, which is not what I was expecting in my main file, which is expecting an object, which is also what I've shown in my presentation earlier. I want to return objects. So let's change this to an object. It's a bit more verbose. I'm not sure if it's better, but it was what I started with. So let's continue. I also need to use my full template name, which includes EGS. I need to move these headers, and then I need to call render, the template name, and variables. So this is my main file, which is not going to be tested automatically. So I'm going to test it manually by just starting the application. Now let's see if it works. There's no error. So no error is usually success, but maybe not today. Hello, Joe. So that works. Now I never have to open the browser again, I hope. Now, because I changed the return value of handle request from an array to an object, the test will fail because it expects an array and returns an object. So let's just update the test accordingly. So now the testing structure is working and the application is running with a hello Joe screen. I want to create a sign up and a login screen. For the sign up and login, we need a database. Usually you want to save the password without actually saving the password, so you need to hash the password. Usually you want to send an email to confirm the user's account, to activate an account, but we don't have email because that requires a dependency. So I'm just going to stick with a username and password, and if you lose your password, well, too bad, it's gone. But we still need to find a way to hash the passwords. Usually I use bcrypt, but that's a dependency, so that's not available to us. But Node does have scrypt, which is similar to bcrypt. It's supposed to be better. I never actually used it, but I'm going to use it right now. To get started, off screen I've made my own scrypt wrapper that basically behaves similar to bcrypt, where it generates a salt for you and then hashes the password, and also provides a verify function to extract the hash from the string so you can verify the password. And then I've made an auth module that exposes a sign up method and a login method that you can use to sign up or login. The sign up method basically adds a new user with a hash password to an array or a map specifically. And the login method fetches the user if it exists and then checks the password. And if the user isn't found, it returns a user not found error, and if the password is incorrect, it returns an invalid password error. And I can use these modules in my application. Okay, so now we have 3 routes. So let's write a form for the login form. So this is a template containing the username, a password field, and a login button. Let's see if it renders correctly. I need to restart the test. Let's just first see if it fails for some reason, and it does, because error code is missing. There's an error in the template, which has no line whatsoever. It's just error code not defined. And if I look at the template, there is indeed an error code reference which is not returned by app. So let's just do that. Error code is always null. And then I have to update my test again, because tests are failing because I added an error code which is null. Now I usually use to match object in Jest, so I don't need an exact object match like this is. So this is a bit annoying. I don't want to define this explicitly every test. I don't want to define every variable explicitly. So maybe I will change the test in some way, but not for now. Params is not defined. So in my template, I've chosen to use params rather than embedding username directly. So let's just use username. And the test should succeed. And it does. That's great. Now let's see if it renders in the browser. And I need to start the application. Hello, Joe. So we have a very nice login form right now, which submits to a broken route. So let's just implement this post login route, which it submits to. And first I want to write a test for this login page, for the submission of the login page. So post login with unknown user returns user not found error. So we have a post and we have a body with a username unknown and a password invalid, whatever, valid. And these are submitted and the response must be the username, because we want to, if the user had a typo, we want to give the user a chance to correct their username, but we don't want to post the password again. So they have to re-enter the password. And the error code must be user not found, which was defined in auth here, user not found, as a symbol. I don't know if I will keep the symbol. Maybe I will just use strings. But this is what the test looks like. And if I run this test, it should fail, but let's just verify if it fails, and it does. It renders a not found error, which is great. And then we open app again, and we implement our post, and it accepts a body. And it always returns user not found, because that's the minimum code required to make the test succeed. Body.username and the password is auth. Import auth from auth. Okay, I need a constructor with an auth object. This.auth. This is a private variable or private member if you don't know. The pound symbol in a class means a private member. It's a JavaScript feature. It's relatively new. So my next error is cannot destructure property auth of undefined as it is undefined. Well, thank you. Do I want to pass the auth object in a constructor or do I want to initialize it myself? Because the auth class also requires a pass object. And the pass class also has all kinds of configuration like key length and cost. So I don't want my app to be bothered with the configuration of a pass class or an auth class. So instead I will just accept them in a constructor. Whatever application or code is using app needs to provide an auth object. So let's just do that. And let's move all our app initializations to a before each. Let app, let auth. Oh wait, it's no TypeScript. It's not TypeScript. App is new app. And then we need auth is new. And then we need pass, which has a cost of 2, which is the lowest possible. And a key length of, I don't think you need to define that. To remove the new app statements. Yeah, that's all. And the one test still fails. Cannot destructure property body of undefined as it is undefined. Which is correct because, well, we don't include a body. So let's just do that. Oh, we do. That's interesting. Oh, so I need to pass the params given to handle request to the function that's called. So the post login function can accept the body and use it to log in. So let's see what the tests say. Okay, now we have the symbol difference. Because it's a symbol and not a string, I think the symbols are just annoying. So I'm just going to make them strings. So by symbol. And the test still succeeds. Now let's implement the other test cases, because this is user not found error, which is the default. So, because our tests are getting quite big, I'm going to try to reduce some duplication by creating a helper method that performs a request and saves the response. And it also will render the response, and it will accept a method, a path and the body just as 3 params. We can replace this with, oh, it doesn't accept a method because the method is get. And it doesn't accept the body because it's a get request. So just this, get foo, and this should be it. Then we need a response variable. So this already cleans up a bit. We have the render method here to check the template, and we can also make a post method like this with a body post, and post login, and then just the params or the body, and I can get rid of this. I also don't need this render call. I can just do this, login. So this already cleans up the test a bit, in my opinion. Now let's see if I can change this assert deep equal in some way. So I can make an assert render method, which I've done already, which kind of looks like this, and it asserts a template name and the variables, which is home.egs, something like this. And then we don't need this. So this already cleans up the test a lot. I do need to implement assert render, so let's just do that. Function assert render, template, variables, assert equal. So if I render the wrong template, I don't get the huge error. I just get a, yo, you got the wrong template, my man, error. And if the template's correct, then it only checks the variables. Maybe that gives better errors. We will figure it out. So I can replace this with login and the variables, unknown, known. And the error code is user not found. See, this is where I need to check the response. Variables. I can just do this. Assert equal rest status 404. See, it's fine. It's only one test case. So do my tests still succeed? And yes, they do. But they're a lot more readable in my opinion.